Okay. 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 Good morning. I'm Dr. Emma Tevis. Thank you for joining me here. We're about to do a little Zoom class on how to improve your breathing. And so the place that I always want to start is with the anatomy of breathing. And so let's just start by taking a look at the thoracic diaphragm. So actually, let me see this better. So here's a picture of your thoracic diaphragm. Here's a beautiful netter image. One of my favorites. One of my favorite images. So you can see this is what the diaphragm would be looking like if you were standing on the bladder and looking up at your chest cavity from underneath. You'd see that the diaphragm is a sheet of muscle and fascia attached to the bottom of your sternum here, the bottom of your rib cage. You see that it comes around. Here's the tip of the 11th rib. Here's the tip of the 12th rib. Here's the tip of the transverse process of L1. And then you see that there's another little suspension bridge. So there's two suspension bridges. One from, you can see it over here. Oops. So there's a little bit of glare there, huh? One, you can see, goes from the tip of the 12th rib to the tip of the transverse process, and that allows for the quadratus to slide underneath it. And then you see that there is, another suspension bridge from the tip of the transverse process to the front of the spine itself. And you see that it actually comes down the spine. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and screen share this because I have one right here. That might be easier to see since there's a glare today. Make it big. Oops, I made it small. I didn't make it big. Hold on. There we go. So here it is again. And I'll just use the cursor here to point out what I'm talking about. Here's a little bridge from the tip of the 12th rib right here, tip of the transverse process of L1, and then another suspension bridge, and they allow for the quadratus and the psoas to slide underneath. There's also another suspension bridge from one side of the front of the spine to the other side of the front of the spine. And you can see that the diaphragm actually climbs all the way down to L3 or L4. And that the fibers that climb all the way down to L4 come up and actually make this loop around the esophagus. A loop. And they also allow the aorta to come underneath, from above the diaphragm to below the diaphragm by sliding behind it. And so, like we said, this is a sheet of muscle, skin, and fascia. A sheet of muscle and fascia, connective tissue. And if you want to go ahead and trace these borders out on your body, you can put your finger on the tip of your sternum and then follow it around the bottom of your rib cage, and you can follow it all the way around to your spine, right? Now, if you want to know how far down your spine your diaphragm comes, then go ahead and put your finger on your navel, and then push this away a little bit. So you're going to go ahead and put your finger on your navel, and you're going to run it around, and you'll find that if you just go right around at the same level, you'll hit the top of your hip. And then if you keep going around from that same level, that's about your level of L4, right? So your diaphragm comes down to L4 in the back. That's the level of your navel. Your diaphragm comes down to the level of your sternum in the front. Okay? So what I want you to do right now is bring your mind to the borders of your diaphragm where you know it's attached. And I want you to, in whatever position you're in right now, I want you to notice the sensations you have there as you inhale and exhale. I want you to notice that the sensations of inhalation feel different from the sensations of exhalation. The sensations of inhalation are the sensations of contraction. The sensations of exhalation are the sensations of relaxation. If you're looking up at the diaphragm from below, when it's relaxed, it's going to be shaped like a dome or a cathedral ceiling, right? A parachute. It's like you're looking up at the underside of a parachute when it's relaxed. When it contracts, the muscle fibers of your diaphragm will shorten, because that's how muscles work. And when they shorten, they slide past each other, and as they shorten, the diaphragm flattens. It goes from being shaped like a parachute to being shaped like a drum head, right? So it goes from this, and as it contracts, it flattens. And when it does, it's going to push everything that's in your abdomen down, and that's going to smush into the floor of your pelvis. And as a result, the contents of your abdomen are going to smush outward. They're going to squish outward, like an exercise ball will squish if you sit on it. Simultaneously, flattening your diaphragm is also going to enlarge your chest cavity. So your chest cavity has all the other borders of the chest cavity are fixed, right? So as your diaphragm flattens, they stay the same, but the volume of the chest cavity increases, right? And the diaphragm goes from being shaped like a dome to being shaped like a drum head. So that's going to increase the volume of the chest cavity. And when it does, that's like opening a bellows. When you open a bellows and make it larger inside, you create a vacuum. And that vacuum is the reason air enters the chest from the external environment. When your diaphragm relaxes, right? So here it is contracted. When it relaxes, the diaphragm domes back up like a parachute because the muscle fibers elongate. Joshua, is there any way we could cook a little quieter? Please, thank you. I just got a message that it's extremely loud. Sorry about that. So when the diaphragm elongates, right, and it relaxes when it elongates and the diaphragm domes back up, that is going to allow the internal organs to lift up underneath it, like little skydivers would lift up underneath a parachute that opens up. And simultaneously, that makes your chest cavity smaller again. That's like closing a bellows. When you close a bellows and make it small inside, you increase the pressure. When you increase the pressure, the air that's inside goes out. And that's the reason why air goes out when we exhale. So your diaphragm is a pump that moves air into and out of the chest cavity. However, it is simultaneously a pump that moves your fluids into and out of your chest cavity. So that means that there's blood in the veins, there's lymphatic fluids, which is the fluids in the spaces between your cell, and even sinus drainage. Any fluids you have inside the body are going to be drawn towards your chest cavity every time you inhale. And every time you exhale, the increased pressure that is generated inside your chest through the relaxation of your diaphragm actually helps the heart push blood out. So your diaphragm has a circulatory function, which is a very underappreciated fact in general. It's not that it's unknown, but it's very underappreciated. In fact, the part of it that is most substantial, the fluid return aspect of the diaphragm, is actually, it appears to be mostly ignored. Like there's some understanding of it. We know that people get very edematous if we put them on a positive pressure respirator in the hospital. Their legs will they'll get very swollen in their legs, and maybe their whole body. Sometimes it comes right up into the person's torso. But we don't really appreciate the power of having access to control of our fluid return system. Or we don't even really pay much attention to our fluid return system at all, for that matter. So So like I said, this is a very underappreciated fact, but it's very good news because your diaphragm is a skeletal muscle. And so it is capable of, or it's amenable to your conscious control. You can go ahead and just take control of your diaphragm and improve your breathing at will. That's not something you can do for your heart or your liver or your kidney. You can't just decide to do a better job with it. But as long as you're, not, you haven't received like a neurological injury to your cervical spine, you have control of your diaphragm, which is pretty great because it's a direct handle on your physiology. And I will explain why. The first thing I want you to do is bring your mind back again to the borders of your diaphragm where you know it's attached. And I want you to, again, pay attention to the sensations that you have there as you inhale and exhale. And I want you to notice, especially for those of you who have not taken this class in the past, that you probably feel most, if not all, of the sensation of breathing on the front of your body, and probably very little of that sensation do you feel on the back. Yes? I'm pretty confident that that's going to be true for more than 99% of the population at this point. So this is what I want to show you now. I'm trying to figure out, I made a slideshow last night. But I'm not sure what happened to it. So it's okay. So here we are. This is another view of the diaphragm that I want to point out to you. This is a really great view for seeing how much of your diaphragm is actually on the back of your body, right? If you look here, right, this is probably about the level of, this is probably right here about the level of L3 or L2, right about here.
I don't think we're seeing that image that you're seeing. We're seeing like all the images.
Oh, okay, hold on. Huh, let me try again. Oh, wait, maybe I have to do it like this. There we go. And then, I don't know. I made a slideshow. What happened to it? All right, it's okay. I'm over it. Here we go. How about now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm over it. I'm already over it. So thank you for telling me what's going on. So here we go. Here is a really great shot of the diaphragm for taking a look at how much of your diaphragm is on the back of your body. This is the bottom of your sternum here. Your navel is probably about down here. And you can see that this is very much like a stage curtain where there's kind of a couple little slips of diaphragm on the sides and the front, but the diaphragm actually goes all the way across the back. This whole chunk here is diaphragmless. This whole chunk here has a lot of diaphragm in it, and the diaphragm actually comes down to about right here, right? So it's very interesting because if we're feeling most of the sensation of the diaphragm on the front of the body, that actually means that we're primarily using the front of the diaphragm to breathe, especially if we're trying to sit up straight. I think a lot of the reason we slouch is probably because it's easier to move the back of the diaphragm when we slouch. But yes, this is a wonderful picture to look at to see how much diaphragm is on the back of your body. So now I'm going to show you some other, I want to show you some other slides. And sadly, let me see, how do I do this? Sadly, I believe that my slides, I'm not sure what happened to them. Oh, maybe I can look for them right here. Oh, monkeys here. You'll get better at this. All right, so let's go back to my screen share because I want to show you before we start, before I have everybody lie down, Oh, that's not how that works right now. I need to do this like this. Hold on. I need to go to this one, and then I need to get my little folder out. There we go. Just make sure that it's not floating around on my, no. All right. So, instruction. There we go. So there's this picture I wanted to show you. And how do I stop? Sorry, it's challenging. Okay, so let's look at some pictures that I want to show you before we actually go into the breathing class. I want to show you pictures of the thoracic diaphragm. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to pull these up one at a time. So here's another picture of the thoracic diaphragm. Again, gives you a really great impression of how much diaphragm is on the back of your body, right? I wanted you to see this picture. This is a picture of your pelvic floor. This is looking up at your pelvic floor from below your legs, so you can see that the pelvic floor is also a sheet of muscle, skin, and fascia, connective tissue with some holes in it that allow, right, there's some holes. So I want you to just basically I'm going to show you a bunch of pictures. I just want you to have these in your mind for when we're doing our breathing practice. And I want to show you this guy. This is a picture of your shoulder girdle, right? These are the muscles involved in your shoulder girdle. Let me show you another one. I don't have great pictures of the shoulder girdle yet, but I want you to see these puffy structures, and you can almost imagine just from looking at them how they could puff out and come back in, right? You could see that everything could really kind of just go out and come back in. Okay, and then let's just throw some of these other things in here just for fun. How about this one? Look at this. Look at this interesting expandable sheet attached to a frame that is the floor of this frog's mouth. And then let's look at this one. This is what makes it big. There we go. Look at that. And look at this underneath here. This is analogous to the floor of a frog's mouth down here. And, oops. And I've got some more. Sorry, let's see. This is the roof of your mouth. Okay? See the edges of your teeth? This is a mouth with a lot of ridges in it. Some of you may have a lot of ridges, some of you may have not so many. But take a look at the roof of your mouth. And now let's actually look at this from the side. Very interesting. So here's the floor of your mouth down here. Here's the roof of your mouth. This is the roof of your nasal passages. Just want to point that out. Look at your tongue. This isn't what your tongue feels like, is it? But look how much of your tongue is, like, look how big your tongue is. Your tongue is huge. Just want you to see, okay? And now, and so actually, just with this picture in mind, I want you to go ahead and notice where your tongue sits in your mouth. Feel how much of the roof of your mouth can you actually just take this, like put this right up against the roof of your mouth and feel how much of the roof of your mouth, how your tongue just basically fits into that whole spot there, right? And you don't have to have this space. You can have your tongue right up against the roof of your mouth. Oh, look, here's your temporomandibular joint. That's nice to notice. And then I want you to look at this. Oh, look at this. This is a picture of a sheet of muscle, skin, and fascia that covers your cheek and attaches to your mandible and your cheekbone and your upper jaw. Look at that. Just want to show you some of these pictures so that you can have them in your access to them when we go to look at things inside of ourselves. Are you guys able to see these pictures okay? Okay, so here's another one. This is let's make this big. That didn't make it very big, did it? Okay, but here it is. You see this ring of bone here? You guys see this? This bone comes along the edge. Well, now let's look at it. Now let's look at the same area with a sheet of muscle over it. Oh, that didn't get very big either, did it? Oh, there we go. So see what that same ring looks like with this sheet of muscle across it, okay? So just see the shape of that and try to feel where this, try to feel for this on your own body. Can you feel, with your mind, can you feel this bone? Can you feel the ridge of this bone? Can you feel this whole scooped out area here? And then let's look at, here's your ear. Look at this ear canal. And what's at the end of the ear canal? Your tympanic membrane. It's also called your eardrum. Right, here's a little picture of your eardrum. Oops, open. There we go. There's a picture. This is this little thing right here is this right here. Okay. And then the eyeball. Let's look at the eyeball. Let's start with the bony cup around the eyeball. Okay, see the bony cup around the eyeball? See these little muscles here that control which way your eyeball moves? When this muscle shortens, it's going to take the eyeball that way. If this muscle shortens, it's going to look the eyeball up. If this muscle shortens, it's going to pull the eyeball down, etc. So let's look at the eyeball now itself. Right? Actually, let's look at the eyeball with all of the stuff around it. So here's the bone that we saw before. But look at all this stuff. Look at all these fat cells. Look at these muscle cells here, nerve cells here. Such an interesting structure here. The eyeball is such an interesting structure. But see that there's stuff in what we would consider the space between the eyeball and the bony socket. And then if we look at the eyeball itself, then we see that it is this very interesting little diaphragmatic structure. And here's your cornea, and here's your iris, the muscle that opens and closes the pupil. And then here's your lens behind it. It kind of looks like a little mini trampoline back there with these little suspensory things, these little ligaments that hold the lens in the right spot. So let's, and then we can go ahead and take a look at this. So cornea would be here. Iris is this one inside, this muscle inside, this colored part. And the lens is just behind this hole here. So that's the eyeball. And what else did I want to show you about the head? I think that's it. I wanted to, but I don't have a good pic. I couldn't find a good picture of it yet. So let me show you these real quick. This is your axilla. I just want you to see it. This is your antecubital fossa. Can you guys still see what I'm pointing at? This crease of your elbow. You see how there's almost like a little cup shape in there and a little dish shape here. And then there's another dish shape in the palm. Let's see if my picture of this thing comes up okay. And you can see how you can make a little dish out of your palm as well. There we go. And Let me just pull up a couple more and then we'll be done. And here you see a little dish shape behind your knee, a little cup shape in the groin area. And another dish shape in the foot. All right, just wanted to share. That was my show and tell. I'm just going to do a couple more show and tells here because I can. How about this one? This one is lovely. A spider web is a diaphragm. A diaphragm is a sheet attached to a frame, right? So all of these spider webs are sheets attached to a frame. The web is the sheet, and the tree branches are the frame. And then how about this one? The sheet is the sail. The frame is these, I don't know what they're called, masts? These poles on the boat. I don't know what they're called. And this is a diaphragm that is changing the pressure gradient, just like your thoracic diaphragm. It's capturing pressure on this side of the sail, and it's creating negative pressure in front of the sail, so the boat is getting sucked into the negative pressure in front of the boat. Love that. And here's another diaphragm for you. You see that diaphragms are very good at absorbing shock. I'm just showing you a couple pictures of different diaphragms that have different jobs in the world. And we'll do that one last. And oh, of course, this guy, we'll bring him back. What a great diaphragm he's got there. So a diaphragm is a sheet attached to a frame, and I think this picture is kind of neat in so much as it really kind of helps you see some of these dish-shaped areas. You see here, you see them here, you see this area here, underneath here. You can't see the foot or the thigh pit too well, but you can see the axillas. So just make a little mental picture of that to help you find these places in your own body. And then the last thing I'm going to show you is this. Show you my little video here. So that's a picture. That's a little video of kids playing with the parachute. I want you to notice that if everybody's shaking their piece around, there's a lot of waves, a lot of dispersive waves that don't get very far. Right? Now, let me show you this video. This is not a great video of this, but it was the only one I could find at the moment. But I want you to just notice the difference. He's going to make, it's kind of a lackluster wave he makes, but you'll see it's a wave nonetheless. He's going to create a wave, and let's watch what happens to that wave when he's the only one who makes one.
Lift it, just go like this. When I do that, you do that, then you do that right around. So the bubble will go like that.
So that wave was able to touch everybody else's hands.
Lift it, just go like this. When I do that, you do that, then you do that right around. So the bubble.
His wave, if he's the only one making one, travels to the edges just like this. Come on. Just like this one. Oops, let's start at the beginning. There we go. 1 point. Start the wave at 1 point and it ripples to all the other edges. This is why the drum can absorb the shock, because it takes that impact and disperses it. It allows it to ripple out to the edges where it disperses through the body of the frame, and that's what allows the drum to absorb the shock and then also emit a sound, right? It's quite lovely. All right, so with these last images in mind, I'd like everybody I think I left out my sales pitch. But I think that I'll come to the sales pitch while you're already breathing, since I didn't address it yet, and we're already have those images fresh in our mind. Let's go ahead now and find a comfortable spot, preferably lying flat on your back with something under your knees so that your back actually can lay flat on the floor. So be somewhere where your back can lay flat on the floor. So, you know, a couple pillow, a pile of some pillows under your knees would be great so that your back can lay flat on the floor. Okay. Is everybody good? Is everybody down? Awesome. So let's begin taking some breaths. I'm going to talk you through a breathing practice. We're going to try to find our whole thoracic diaphragm. At this point, and this is just an impression, I have no data on this. I'll make that disclaimer, but my impression is that most people probably use about 20 to 30% of their thoracic diaphragm to breathe, if that. I've seen people who use a lot less, and they get plenty of oxygen when they do. The big advantage to better breathing is not more oxygen, it's better fluid return. And like we said, your diaphragm is not just a pump that moves air into and out of your chest cavity, it's a pump that moves fluids into and out of your chest cavity from your internal environment. Blood that's in your veins, lymphatic fluid, sinus drainage even. Those fluids return towards your chest cavity every time you inhale. So as you lay there on the floor, try to become aware for a moment of your whole body. Your whole body that's lying on the floor. If your eyes are open, let them have a very soft focus. Don't tunnel in on anything. Just take the whole room in and feel how allowing your awareness to be very peripheral, very soft, if you will, soft focus, relaxes your mind. Take in the whole room, not just one thing. And breathe as if you could fill yourself from the bottom of your pelvis up to the top of your chest, and empty yourself from the top of your chest down to the bottom of your pelvis. One smooth wave-like motion from the top of the chest down to the bottom of the pelvis, from the bottom of the pelvis to the top of the chest. Remembering that the most important instruction when you practice breathing is to let it be as easy as possible, to let it be relaxed, to let it be something that is softly expansive, almost as if you are not doing anything yourself, as if you're just going to allow the universe to breathe through you. Now, the only muscle that you have to move in order for you to get your best breath is your thoracic diaphragm. And that muscle, and that is a sheet of muscle and fascia and connective tissue that is attached to the bottom of your sternum, the bottom of your ribs, the transverse processes of L1 and the front of the vertebral bodies all the way down to L4, the level of your navel. Now, if you have something with you, like a little towel or a scarf or something like that, that you can put underneath your back at the level of the thoracic diaphragm, that's not a bad idea. Like I could just take off this sweatshirt here and put a little strip of it underneath my back at the level of the thoracic diaphragm. It's sometimes helpful to have something there to direct your awareness there. It'll make it a little easier. So now we're going to, again, notice where we feel most of the sensation of breathing. You may feel more sensation across the back at this point because you're laying with your back flat on the floor, and you've already become aware that you have so much muscle fiber on the back of your diaphragm that you can use if your low back is not hyperextended. So let's bring the mind to the back of the thoracic diaphragm, and let's ask it to participate. Let's ask it, see if you can. If you're there with somebody, if you have either a friend with you or a relative with you, and you're laying in close proximity, one of you can put your hand on the other person's back at this level of the thoracic diaphragm. So put the hand right back there. Just put their hand under their back so that they can bring their mind there. Or if you don't have a friend, you can take, like I said, like a washcloth, a little folded up washcloth or something like that that you can lay in a strip on the back of your body. And what I want you to do is bring your mind to the back of your body. And I want you to ask those fibers to participate. I want you to push that hand or that strip or that bit of floor off of your back with your breath. Try to push it off your back. And notice that when you do this, you awaken a band of sensation across the back of your body. And simultaneously, if you didn't notice it now, do it again. That actually makes it really much easier to take a bigger breath. All you really have to do is direct your awareness to the back of the diaphragm and ask it to participate, and it jumps. It jumps up and wants to come along because it's a skeletal muscle, which is a beautiful thing. So let's start the breath. Let's every time we take a breath right now, we're trying to push whatever it is, whether it's floor or a strip of cloth or somebody's hand, try to push that off of your back with your breath. And some of you may feel like, oh my goodness, I better open my mouth because this created such a large pressure inside the chest cavity that you feel like you have to let it escape through your mouth, or else it's just going to blast right out of the two little holes in your face like they were leaf blowers. But what we want to do right now, or else, and some of you also may have, in order to control the outflow through your nostrils, you may have braced your chest and kind of like tightened your chest wall up so that you could control the outflow of air from your nasal passages. But what we're going to do instead is we're going to make exhalation get easier right now. We're going to realize that we don't actually have to get all the pressure we feel in our chest out of the two little holes in our face. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a big breath, and when we exhale, we're going to imagine that we have a row of organ pipes that come down the back of the body to about the level of thoracic diaphragm. So they're going to come down to right about here on the back of your body, and they're going to go right up out the top of your head, neck, and shoulders on the back. So when you exhale, now I want you to imagine and appreciate that you don't have to get all the pressure you feel in your chest out of the two little holes in your face. I want you to imagine you could simply release that pressure into the atmosphere above your head by using the organ pipes. So go ahead, generate a lot of pressure, and trust me, all you have to do is release the pressure. Just relax, especially on the back of your body, and allow that pressure to get sucked right up out the top of your head and shoulders. And the interesting thing about this is that when you just relax everything and allow the pressure to go through the imaginary organ pipes, the breath seems to trickle out of your nostrils. It seems to trickle out. Because most of the pressure you feel in your chest is not air. It's fluid pressure. It's fluid in the spaces between your cells of your chest wall. It's fluid in the lymphatic vessels. It's fluid in the veins. It's fluid pressure. And anything you do to control the outflow by, tightening your chest, etc., the only thing, that will only restrict the motion of the fluids. It only restricts the motions of the fluids. And if you restrict the motion of the fluid and keep the fluid pressure tight, then you're going to make the walls of that container stiff, and you're going to keep the pressure, the air under more pressure, and it will come out faster from your nostrils because you're not relaxing and letting it go. It's kind of fascinating. So now we're taking big breaths because we're using the back of our diaphragm. We're releasing through the organ pipes. And at this point, what we want to do is improve your inhalation. And the way we're going to improve the inhalation is we're going to recall that little video of the kids playing with the parachute. And we're going to know that if we try to initiate that, if we try to, with our mind, coordinate one wave-like motion with everybody pulling on the edges of the parachute, we're going to make a whole bunch of discursive waves, and we're not going to create the most effective inhalation. What I want you to do is make your inhalation more like one man making the wave, the one man making a wave in that parachute, and let that person, that man or that woman, be the person, the kid, standing on the front of your spine. Let that person be standing on the back of your body. Let the wave start on the back of your body. So you're going to start your breath by letting your breath push into your back. And from there, you're going to let it go. And you're going to let it ripple forward through your chest. You're going to feel it ripple all the way around the edges of the inferior border, the bottom border of the diaphragm. You're going to feel a bead of breath travel along each side of the ribs, meeting at the sternum, along with the wave that travels right through the muscle belly of the diaphragm itself. Start the breath on the back. And then let the breath take on a life of its own and let it fill your chest for you. A bead of contraction will come up. It will start to spread at L1 like a flashlight beam, and it will travel around the edges while simultaneously a wave of contraction flows right through the center of the diaphragm to the front of the body. Let the wave fill your body for you. Take advantage of the natural capacity of a diaphragm to ripple. The reason that the surface tension on a body of water ripples is because the surface tension is a diaphragm, a sheet of increased hydrogen bonding on the surface of the water attached to the edge of the pond or the glass or whatever it is. That sheet has the properties of a diaphragm because it is a diaphragm. So it has the capacity to ripple. Your thoracic diaphragm also has the capacity to ripple. And if you allow this ripple to coordinate the motion of your thoracic diaphragm, you will get you'll get a better breath. It will be coordinated naturally, and so it will be the most effective effort. Good, and now you may even notice how when the breath, as the breath ripples through the muscle belly of the diaphragm, you may even notice that it comes right up to the top of the chest and actually lifts the shoulders, lifts the shoulders. It lifts the shoulders up almost like you have shoulder pads that expand off of your body. Let that happen. Are you done? Okay. I'm sorry it was so loud. I didn't really realize anyone was. I'm sorry it was so loud. Sorry. Back to allowing the breath to have a life of its own. Let it travel to the top of the chest and then let it leave the chest first, and let yourself feel a sense of emptying go right down through the chest, and then allow that emptying to continue all the way down into the pelvis itself. And let's bring our mind inside the abdomen right now, and let's notice the sensations that we feel inside the abdomen as we inhale and exhale. Let's notice that the sensations of inhalation feel different from the sensations of exhalation. I want you to notice that when you inhale, it feels very much like when a wave comes in from the ocean and pressurizes your body, pushing it towards the pelvic floor. And when that wave goes out, you feel a sense of drawing on your organs, pulling them up towards your head. And I want you to now, every time you exhale, I want you to see if you can relax more deeply than the time before. See if you can let just a little bit more relaxation happen in the muscle belly of the diaphragm, especially on the back of the diaphragm. Trust me that there's so much muscle, there's so much untapped muscle on the back of your diaphragm that you can probably just continue to throw the signal to relax at the back of your diaphragm for a very long time before you have to inhale again. And as you do this, you're going to notice that every time you let more air, every time you relax more deeply, you let more air out. And every time you let more air out, you make room to take a bigger, better, more satisfying breath on your next inhalation. Because you have to empty yourself before you can be filled. If we only close the bellows halfway, we're only going to get a half stroke in. And a half stroke will give us plenty of oxygen. We will set at 99, 100%, taking not so great breaths. You'll get plenty of oxygen with a lousy breath, but what you won't get is good fluid return. And good fluid return is good physiology. So keep relaxing with each exhalation, keep relaxing. Go deeper. Don't strain, don't compress, don't squeeze anything. Just keep relaxing your diaphragm. And notice that at some point, even though you are still relaxing, the air will stop moving. The air stops moving. But you can continue to relax for some time. I want to encourage you to do so. Because even though the air has stopped moving, you can continue to exhale. You can continue to relax fibers of your diaphragm. And when you do, you're going to continue to move fluid. In fact, you're going to move more fluid when the air stops moving. Because once the air stops moving, all the force of pressure gradient change can now be devoted to fluid motion rather than air motion, rather than air and fluid. So go ahead and explore this beautiful, open, spacious place between exhalation and inhalation. in a lot of yoga, a lot of yoga instruction will tell people to retain the breath out, kind of like tell people to hold their breath in between breaths. I think that this is a misunderstanding probably of the original instruction, which is probably that you're you're not retaining a breath out, you're not holding your breath, you're just still relaxing fully so that you can get a full stroke in. On the next breath. So relax, relax, relax between inhalations. And as you do, every time you relax more deeply with each exhalation, you're going to notice that that sense of drawing moves deeper and deeper into the pelvis. That the sense of drawing dives far below your navel and feels like it is reaching for your pelvic floor, lifting everything up in its wake, in its way. As it travels down, everything lifts up, and then eventually you will get to the pelvic floor itself, and the pelvic floor will lift up. It will feel as if you're doing a slight, spontaneous, effortless little kegel. Not a kegel that you try to do, but a kegel that simply happens because your organs are lifting up. And so the pelvic floor has to lift up as well. It'll almost feel like your pelvic floor, remember those pictures I showed you, that your pelvic floor is puckering in into your pelvis. Let that happen. And when you're feeling motion at the floor of the pelvis at the end of exhalation, what you'll feel right afterwards is it will drop. And when it drops, you can start to inhale. When it lifts at the end of exhalation, it can be the last thing to contribute positive pressure to your chest cavity because it lifts up your internal organs, which lift into your thoracic diaphragm and create the last little bit of positive pressure on your chest. And when it falls, which is what it does right after it lifts, it can be the first thing to generate negative pressure because it pulls down on your internal organs, which pull down on your thoracic diaphragm and begins the process of enlarging your chest cavity. So now your pelvic floor is participating in moving air and fluid in your body. And it can do that because your pelvic floor is your pelvic diaphragm. And just like the sail, your pelvic floor can participate in changing the pressure gradient. So now you are moving fluid and air with 2 pumps instead of 1. And that means better fluid return, and that means better physiology. And now that we have these first 2 diaphragms operating together, and let's go ahead and just put it out there that your shoulder girdle is also a very interesting complex diaphragmatic structure. And if you're allowing that to be lifted at the end of inhalation and falling at the beginning of exhalation, now you're breathing with 3 diaphragms. If you're allowing that wave-like motion that's initiated at L3, L4 to spread out and recruit your shoulder girdle and recruit your pelvic floor, you're now using 3 diaphragms to breathe instead of just 20 to 30% of 1. So while you do this, I'm going to give you my little sales pitch. My little sales pitch for why I think you should do this every day, at least once a day when you first wake up. But honestly, there's no reason, especially at a time like this when there are serious respiratory illnesses that we are all trying to avoid. And we don't really want any respiratory illness to become, or any illness, to move to a very advanced state of pathology. learning how to breathe and manage your fluids, I believe, will help people avoid serious respiratory crisis. But let me talk now about the reasons why this is such a gift from the universe, that we have this beautiful diaphragmatic uh, system within ourselves. So let me just. Yes. So, in order to talk about why this is so important for you and your physiology, we need to discuss lymph. Lymph is the fluid in the spaces between your cells. It's the clear fluid that you would see if you skin your knee. And when we see it, we say, oh, that's just lymph. But the lymph is just as important as the blood. And we all know about blood. We know what it looks like and where it is and what it does, where it's going. We have some sense of what its job is. Not so much with lymph. And very few physicians really think much about lymph at all, unless there's very advanced pathology, like somebody has congestive heart failure, so their legs are all swollen, or somebody is septic in the ICU, so they're all swollen, and they're kicking all this fluid into the spaces between their cells. Or there's some other advanced pathology like a lymphoma or a non-healing wound, because there's so much congestion that wounds won't heal. But really, your lymph, when it comes to your health, your lymph is just as important as your blood. Now, from one perspective, we could say that your lymph arises from the blood. As your blood is passing through the capillary bed, these capillaries they're microscopic. They're very tiny vessels, and they are only 1 cell thick, and so they're considered semi-permeable. They allow for the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide to take place, both in your tissues and around the air sacs of your lungs. But they also allow for the leakage of plasma. So the plasma is the clear fluid that the red blood cells are suspended in. That plasma, as the blood is passing through the lymph, can leak out of the capillaries. And when it does, we call it lymph. You could, from one perspective, say that lymph is plasma in the extracellular space, and plasma is lymph inside the blood vessels. It's pretty much the same. It's the clear fluid. And it is what brings things to your cells that your cells want and need, like nutrients and fats and proteins. It's the means by which your immune system travels to all the other parts of your body that it needs to go, that aren't all the parts of your body that aren't inside your blood vessels, which is most of your body is not inside your blood vessels. So the lymph is the extracellular fluid, the fluid matrix of the cells is how these things get where they need to go. Now, it's also the place where cells dump metabolic waste product. So the waste products of your metabolism, like lactic acid, for example, are going to get dumped in your lymphatic system. So the longer that fluid stays in one spot, like let's say some fluid leaked out of my my capillaries into my hand, and for whatever reason, maybe I had a tourniquet on, maybe, who knows, for whatever reason, that fluid is not escaping from my hand. If it just stays there for a long time, the longer it stays there, the more it's going to become depleted in the things my cells want, like nutrients. The concentration of nutrients will go down in the extracellular space. And simultaneously, the concentration of waste product will go up. The concentration of waste product will go up. What else will go up? Well, any inflammatory mediators that were summoned or released in that area are going to stay there. And so if there's a continued source of inflammation, you're just going to get a higher concentration of inflammatory markers in an area if the lymph isn't moving, because the lymph is the way that it circulates out of an area. So low concentration of nutrients, high concentration of waste and inflammatory markers, and now you have a situation in your tissues where it becomes harder for cells to get rid of waste, because the cells will have to fight a concentration gradient in order to rid themselves of waste. If you have, now some of you may not remember this phrase gradient from your high school science classes, but the gradient is a natural tendency in nature for things to go from high to low. So if I pick something up and I drop it, it's not going to fly up to the ceiling, it's going to fall to the ground. It will go from a high energy state to a low energy state. Keep letting the breath come in from the bottom to the top, emptying from the top to the bottom. Letting the breath come in on the back of the body, letting it travel through the rest of the body. And understanding that as you're doing this, your diaphragm is actually pumping fluid around your body. It's drawing waste product from your tissues, drawing it back into circulation. All of the waste product from the lower body is going to collect just below your sternum, and it's going to ride in a tube right up to your clavicle on the left side of your neck. And it will re-enter your circulation where it can be reprocessed and recycled. But if the waste product accumulates and the concentration goes up and it's harder for cells to push waste product out, they're going to have to use more energy, which is your energy, to get rid of that waste product, or that waste product may accumulate inside the cell. And if it does, now you're going to have a concentration gradient that pushes backwards on your biochemistry. It is going to slow down your metabolism, because reactions will not want to push forward against the natural tendency to go from high to low. They'll want to go with that tendency, not against it. And that means that your vitality and your tissues will not be what it could be if those tissues did not have a high concentration of waste product in the extracellular space. So it's very important to clear waste product from the extracellular space. And the main thing that does that is your thoracic diaphragm. There's an absolutely direct relationship between the goodness of your fluid return and the benefit to your physiology. Because clearing waste product doesn't just remove an obstacle to your good physiology, it actually creates the biochemical circumstances that are most auspicious for forward motion, right? By having a low concentration of waste product, you draw those reactions forward. Everything congested with lymph will be stiff, like a plant stem is stiff when it's full of fluid. It will probably be painful, or at least tender, as the pressure in the tissues itself is felt as pain, is perceived as pain. And the tissues will always lack the vitality they could have if they were not congested. So 3 things come along with lymphatic congestion: stiffness, pain, or at least tenderness, and loss of vitality. Loss of vitality means slower cell repair, slower metabolism, slower cell replication. Right? All of these things slow down when you have congestion in the lymph. And the wonderful thing about this is that the main thing, the best thing you have for clearing waste product from your tissues is your thoracic diaphragm. It is your internal osteopath with you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and absolutely free. If we just take a little time to develop conscious competence. So now let's return to focusing on improving our inhalation. And now, instead of just starting the breath on the back, I want you to see if you can start your breath on the spine itself. See if the first sensation you perceive in your inhalation is your spine, is the lumbar spine engaging and being pushed backward in your body. And then let the breath spread out in a ripple from there. And everywhere you generate sensation on an inhalation, relax. Relax, 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 relax. Because wherever you generate sensation is a place where a muscle fiber contracted. And if we want our best breath, we have to relax it after we contract it. And now, let's get even more specific. Let's start the breath on L4. Let's let it roll up your spine in a wave-like fashion. And from there, spread around the inferior, the bottom borders of the chest cavity, and right up to the top of the chest, lifting the shoulder blades. So the whole torso is expanding concentrically and collapsing concentrically in an undulating fashion. And now let's make sure that the tongue is flat on the roof of the mouth. Put your tongue flat on the roof of the mouth. Recall that image of the tongue I showed you before we started to practice. And just make your tongue, let the whole surface of your tongue be flat on the roof of your mouth. You don't have to push it hard. Just make contact up there and then swallow. I want you to notice that when you swallow, it takes all the excess space out of your mouth and creates a suction seal at your lips and a suction seal between your tongue and the roof of the mouth and the tongue and the floor of the mouth. And when it does, you'll feel everything in your mouth is stuck together. And what I want you to do on your next inhalation is to gently draw your tongue toward the back of your head by about 1 millimeter, like a nudge. Nudge your tongue toward the back of your head as you inhale, and notice the sensations that that generates in the back of your head, neck, and shoulders when you do that. I want you to notice how, when your tongue is suctioned to the roof of the mouth and you pull it back, it takes your palate back with it. And that generates a wave of breath being drawn up into the back of the head, neck, and shoulders. Almost like you're laying at the edge of the ocean and feeling a wave washing up the back of your body, but not washing up your face. And now, instead of pulling your tongue toward the back of your head, what I want you to do is pull your tongue straight down. Pull it down into it's a little nudge. You're not going to break the suction seal. You're just going to nudge your tongue straight down into the floor of your mouth. And notice that that too produces changing sensation at the back of your head, neck, and shoulders. But simultaneously, it also puts a little flux, a little bow. When you pull your tongue down, when it's suctioned to the roof of your mouth, it puts a little bow in the palate. So now let's combine the two vectors. Let's pull the tongue both back and down. So down and back at the same time. So at a 45-degree angle, you pull the tongue back and down. And you'll notice a couple things happen. You get a flux in the palate. You get sensation up the back of your head, neck, and shoulders, and your tongue gets shorter and fatter. It scrunches when you do this. And as it scrunches, it's going to push on the insides of your teeth and it's going to nudge your palate a little bit wider. And it's going to make you feel like you're going to smile for no reason other than you're taking a better breath. So now we're going to relax the volitional motion of the tongue, and we're going to focus. We're going to bring our mind instead to the front of our throat and underneath our chin. And I want you to notice that when your tongue is at the front of your throat and underneath your chin, when your awareness is at the front of your throat and underneath your chin, you can feel that there is a slight tugging sensation that happens at the front of your throat and under your chin as you inhale and exhale, or as you inhale rather. Feel for the tugging sensation at the front of your throat and under your chin. And I want you to allow your tongue now to be pulled by that pulling sensation. I want you to allow the tongue to pull the tongue. I want you to allow that pulling sensation to take your tongue back and down with it. And I want you to notice that when you allow this to happen, you don't have to try to move your tongue to get a breath in your head. It happens for you. All you have to do is allow. In fact, the vast majority of better breathing is allowing it to happen, allowing the breath to travel into all of the tissues. It's not a process of going and getting and making it happen. It's a process of allowing something to come in and allowing something to permeate through your entire being, your entire body. So now let's allow the whole lower jaw, this whole lower jaw, to get pulled back and down along with the tugging sensation at the front of your throat. The tugging sensation at the front of your throat is a result of the fact that your mouth is the opening of a tube. And that tube will then be called your throat, and then we'll call it your esophagus, and then we'll call it your stomach. Your stomach is just, and your intestines thereafter, they're all the same tube. But when your stomach gets pushed down as your thoracic diaphragm contracts and flattens, and your stomach gets pushed down, it actually drags the whole food tube down with it. So that tugging sensation you feel at the front of your throat is actually being generated directly by your diaphragm pushing your stomach down and tugging the whole food tube down. So you can simply allow that wave to come through the tissues and bring motion into the whole lower jaw. When the whole lower jaw moves back and down, you will feel a flux in the floor of the mouth. You will feel it get drawn in on inhalation. You'll feel it puff back out on exhalation. So it'll get drawn in as you inhale. It will puff back out as you exhale. In and then out. That little bullfrog part of your chin gets drawn in on the inhalation. It puffs back out on the exhalation if you allow it to move. And if you allow it to move, what I think you'll notice is that brings pressure gradient change to the very center of your head. And it'll feel like the center of your head is cooling off, like you have a little cooling, effervescent fountain of light in the center of your head. So now the whole lower jaw is moving, and when the lower jaw moves, it actually carries the tongue back and down, initiating motion in the palate, so the breath comes up the back of the head, neck, and shoulders as well. Now let's bring our mind to the roof of the nasal passage, the image I showed you earlier, the roof of the nasal passage. And I want you to let your awareness be on the roof of your nasal passage, which is just a little bit below your eyes and between them, inside your head. And I want you to notice that when you allow that area to be relaxed, as you inhale, you're going to feel it get drawn down on inhalation and puff back up on exhalation. And when you allow this motion to happen in the roof of the nasal cavity, you will feel the center of your head get even cooler. And now let's bring our awareness to our cheeks, the sheet of muscle, skin, and fascia with some holes in it. Very analogous to the pelvic floor if you think about it. It's just the diaphragm at the other end of the tube from the pelvic floor. So let your cheeks be very soft and relaxed. And notice that when you inhale, your cheeks hug your teeth. And when they exhale, they release your teeth. And when you allow that motion to happen in your cheeks, it feels like you can breathe in through your entire face, not just two little holes, but your whole face opens up to let air in, to let breath in, really. And now let's bring our minds into our eardrums, our ear canals. Follow your ear canals to their medial ends where you know your eardrums are. Find that region of your body and let it be very soft and relaxed. And notice that when you inhale, your eardrums get drawn into the center of your head as you inhale, and then they drift back outward as you exhale. And when you allow this motion to happen in your eardrums, it feels like you could sip the breath right through the little ear holes, and that this whole area of your temporal region, in the bone and in the cranium itself, inside in the brain itself, it's going to feel like the area cools off as you allow the wave-like motion initiated and orchestrated by your thoracic diaphragm as that wave passes through the tissues, moving the fluids. Now we have how many diaphragms in the head now? We have at least 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 diaphragms in the head. Well, I guess you could count the ears and the temples and the cheeks as 2. So maybe we have 8 so far. So 8 diaphragms in the head. Now let's bring our mind to the temples. Remember that picture I showed you at the beginning, or before we started to practice. I want you to feel how that area on the sides of your head gets drawn in on inhalation, and then it drifts back out on exhalation. When you allow that little motion to happen in your temples, you can feel your frontal lobe get very nice and cool. Cool, cool. You want it to cool right off. And now let's find our eyeballs in their bony sockets. See if you can feel for the bony socket of your eyeballs. Find them in your head. And see if you can feel for the edges of the bony socket. And now feel for the borders of the eyeball itself. See if you can discriminate between the eyeball and the stuff around the eyeball in the bony socket. The fat cells, the muscle cells, the nerves inside the bony socket. Feel them distinct from the eyeball itself. And as you breathe, I want you to let everything in your eye sockets be very deeply relaxed. And notice how when you do that, you can feel how your eyeballs will get drawn in as you inhale, how they puff back out as you exhale. And when you allow this motion to happen in your eyeballs get cooler. There's an actual temperature change. And you can actually feel that coolness travel all along the distribution of the optic nerve. Oh, I didn't show you that picture. We'll see that later. And now, making sure that you're keeping your awareness very soft and relaxed, go ahead and bring your mind to the edges of your cornea. Feel for the edges of the cornea on the front of your eyeball. See if you can feel for it on your eyeball. Keep your awareness very soft and relaxed. Feel your cornea get drawn in on inhalation. Feel it puff back out on exhalation. And now your iris, just behind your cornea. Feel for the circular muscle that opens and closes your pupil. Feel it get drawn in on inhalation. The front of your eyeball, feel it get drawn in on inhalation. Feel it puff back out on exhalation. And now go below, behind your iris, go to your lens. Remember, your lens looks very much like a mini trampoline. Little mini trampoline suspended behind your pupil. Let it be relaxed and feel motion at the front of your eyeball, pulling in on inhalation, puffing back out on exhalation. Now at this point, it should feel like your whole head gets a little bit bigger and fatter. It lifts up off of your torso as you inhale, and it expands concentrically. Now, this should be happening. You have 3 diaphragms in your torso, multiple diaphragms in your head now. You're breathing with all of them. You'll never need another decongestant as long as you live, or any of that other stuff, because you can clear your own secretions from your head. No surgery needed. Just turn the pumps on in your head and they will do the job for you. Allow them to participate. Allow them to participate. And now our next thing we're going to do is we're going to, on your next inhalation, you're going to lift your toes up. If you want, if you're comfortable laying flat on the floor, then you can kick the bolster out from under your legs and let your legs be flat for right now. If that's gonna pull your low back off the floor, then keep the bolster under your legs and practice this with your knees bent. Same thing. It'll work the same. So what we're gonna do is we inhale, we're gonna lift our toes. We're gonna make a right angle between the toes, between the foot and the ankle, and you're gonna lift the toes. So I'm pushing through the ball of my foot and the heel of my foot, making my arch really high by pushing through and lifting the toes. And if your legs are flat on the floor, it'll be like you're standing on the floor with your toes lifted. You're gonna squeeze all the muscles, including your inner thighs. You're gonna squeeze all the muscles of your lower legs, whether they're bent or straight right now. Squeeze them all as you inhale, right up to your butt cheeks as you inhale. As you exhale, let everything relax. Let everything relax as you exhale. On the inhale, you're going to lift the toes, reach to the bottoms of the foot, squeeze all the muscles of the lower extremities up to the butt cheeks. Exhale, relax, and marvel at what a massive breath you can take when you add 6 more diaphragms to your breathing apparatus. Easily adding 6 more diaphragms to your breathing apparatus by engaging all the muscles of your lower legs. Your arches, the backs of your knees, your thigh pits are all diaphragms, and they can all participate in breathing. Now let's add the arms. Remember, we said you're going to make a dish shape. A dish shape. So the hands will spread, your palms will spread, your fingers will spread. You will not hyperextend. We will do no hyperextension. Hyperextension is not functional. A dish shape like this. Satellite dish, which is also a diaphragm, by the way. There we go. So if I am doing this with my arms, what I'm going to do as I inhale is I'm going to spread my palms, cup my hands a little bit, spread them, and I'm going to squeeze every muscle of my upper extremities, including my lat back here. So everything that is around the axilla. So here is my armpit kind of floppy. When I engage the diaphragm, you see it gets deep, right? So there's floppy, and now I've engaged it and I make a little cup here. See, it's not as defined. Now it's more defined, right? So when you squeeze all the muscles, you'll engage the entire diaphragmatic structure. So we're going to add 3 more diaphragms in each extremity. As we inhale, we're going to spread the fingers, and what will happen is the arms will externally rotate as the latissimus participates. I'm not just turning my arms out, I'm just engaging the sails in each of the diaphragmatic centers, and my arms are sailing to an externally rotated position. So now you've added another 6 diaphragms to your breathing apparatus, and you're probably taking a huge breath. When you first took a breath with your legs, you may have even felt as though you had to open your mouth to let the pressure out, because it's so much more when you add the arms and legs. But you really don't have to. You can still use the organ pipes. Just relax. If you want, you can actually even imagine you could allow the breath to simply dissipate right through the back of your chest wall, because that's really what we're trying to do, is let all of the pressure from the fluid dissipate and stay in motion as the pressure gradient changes. So now you're breathing with 15 diaphragms, not including the head. And then if we add the head, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, plus 6 more, right? Because there's 3 in each eyeball. Fascinating, isn't it? It's crazy. It's a lot of diaphragms in your body, and you can use them all to breathe. And I do not necessarily feel that I have found them all yet. I feel like there are more to be found. So arm and leg breathing, appreciate what a massive breath you can take. This is a wonderful exercise for people with chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia, because you can feel how you are turning your body into one big pumping system. This is a great way for people with chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia to be able to move their lymph, which they desperately need to do, without producing a lot of metabolic waste product that they might do from even just taking a walk. You know, when you're that sick, even just taking a walk is too much metabolic waste product. This way you can move it without making much. This is a way that you can keep your lymph moving even if you're sick in bed, even if you were in the hospital. You could help keep your lymph moving this way, avoid blood clots and other things that happen when your fluids don't move very well. So this is something that you can always do, even when you're feeling lousy, to help yourself feel better. Because if you move your lymph, you will improve your life. And in this day and age, you may even save your life by moving your lymph. So now we're going to do a couple more things before we do some question answer. What I want you to do now is I want you to alternate sides. I want you to engage arms and legs on both sides, and then as you exhale, choose to relax the right side a little more intently than you do on the left. And then what I want you to do as you inhale is you're going to squeeze the arm and leg muscles on the left side as you inhale. And then let them relax. And now squeeze the arm and leg muscles on the right side as you inhale. And then when you exhale, relax them. I want you to notice that when you do this, one side of your body gets longer and fatter than the other. And when you exhale, it collapses more than the other side. And you may even notice that the side of your body that you're engaging, that you have more volume of breath air passing through that nostril. So when I'm engaging on the right side, I feel more breath passing through the nostril. On the right, when I'm engaging on the left, there's more breath passing through the nostril on the left. And you may even notice that as you alternate sides, your body is slightly displaced from the midline. You may find that as you exhale, your body gets drawn towards the side that's exhaling more emphatically. And when you inhale on the other side, it will continue to push you in that direction. As you exhale, you return back to your midline. And if you keep emptying on that side, you'll drift further toward that side. And then when you inhale on the opposite side, it pushes you further in the direction you're already going. Just a fun thing to notice. And now let's stop moving the arms and legs and just return to breathing with the thoracic diaphragm only. But notice that you may still feel motion happening. Bring your awareness into your armpits, and as you complete your exhale, notice that your armpits get dragged in slightly as you finish your exhale, and then they puff back out as you inhale. You may even notice the same thing happening in your thigh pits or your groin. You may notice an undulating disc shape of sensation in your palms, your elbows, your knees, or your arches. An undulating disc shape of sensation that allows you to continue to breathe with those diaphragms even though you're not trying. They will now participate because you've cleared the congestion out of the tissues so they're not as stiff, they're more supple, so they can continue to participate in inhalation and exhalation, in moving fluid and air in your body. But what are we really trying to get at with all of these other diaphragms moving? We're moving the fluids, because that's what will increase your vitality, decrease your stiffness, decrease your pain, and possibly even keep you from having your fluids get so backed up in your chest that you suffer from, we want to avoid you ever getting there. So practice breathing. Anybody you know who's sick, tell them to come here to get in touch with me, and I will teach them how to breathe. I will teach them how to move their lymph. There's no reason that let's just not get to that point where anybody is that fluid backed up, that the fluid pushes back into the air sacs and drowns people. We don't need that. Let's have people breathe better now. And when you're ready, start moving your fingers and your toes. When you're ready to come up to seated, come up to seated. I have time for questions. And as you come to seated, it's not a bad idea to just give yourself a little massage. Just a little massage over your whole face. This whole, your head's almost like a geodesic dome, isn't it? With all the little diaphragms in it. But of course you need to cool your brain off. You have to cool your brain off. So, there you go. Move your lymph. Move or even save your life. Let me unmute you all. Hi, Daddy.
Hi, Chef.
So great to see you. Hello, Tita Cynthia.
I'm here. We're watching.
I love to see you. I love to see you. Does anyone have any questions today? Any questions for me? I think most of you have taken. Hi, Denise.
Hey.
Hi, Denise's mom. That's my dad over there in the other cube.
Hi.
Are there any questions for anybody?
Any questions?
Does somebody get relieved of their sniffles? That's great. I'm sorry about the noise at the beginning. I didn't realize how loud it was. Sorry about that.
Okay.
But you know, Filipinos, they get so hungry and they have to eat something. So they had to do some cooking in the background. Sorry about that. Any questions? Denise, how's your practice going?
Good. There was a lot of rumbling so I could tell the fluids were starting to move.
Yeah. Have you been able to feel stuff coming up in your head more? Have you been able to talk to any? Oh, great. I'm so glad to hear that.
I haven't been able to talk to anybody or go anywhere, but I'm practicing on my own. So, and
Okay.
eventually I'll make it up there.
Okay. Well, look forward to seeing you. Do you have any questions for me today? Not today. Should we bring back, since we have a couple minutes, should we bring back my screen sharing capacities and just look at some of these diaphragms and appreciate them because they're so great. Let's just review them because they're wonderful. Here we go. One of my personal favorites from Netter. How beautiful is this thing? How beautiful its little suspension bridges with its surgeon all the way to L3, L4 to the level of the navel. Now this is a really great thing, you know, in the practice sessions that we're doing during the week, we're really trying to feel for this line of sensation that comes up from the spine and turns into the lower esophageal sphincter. And you know, I've brought this up in terms of the importance it has in with regard to closing off the gastroesophageal junction to keep food from coming back up. But you know, there's another aspect of this that I don't think I've mentioned in these classes and yet, and that is that from this very same loop of diaphragm, we also have, hold on, because I am technologically savvy. We also have for you another one of my very favorite structures. Here is this wonderful, well, you got great pictures of it. Here's one. There we go. This is this beautiful ligament of trike. Look at this beautiful thing. So, this ligament of trike. Do you have butterfly diaphragm? I think that's a very important is sort of residual from how the posterior peritoneal wall formed, which we've talked about in some of our sessions, where as the stomach and the duodenum and the small intestine migrated into the peritoneum, dragging peritoneum behind it, webbing of fascia was left behind, and this ligament is one of those residual webs. But you see that in this ligament, how cool is this? There are actual skeletal muscles growing into the ligament from this end by the esophagus. Skeletal muscle growing in from the diaphragm grows into that ligament. And then from this end of the ligament, smooth muscle. Dad, have you ever seen any slides of this ligament of Treitz with the smooth muscle growing into the ligament?
I don't think I had a chance to
see
look
that
at that.
particular?
To see
Well,
that.
how cool is this? Skeletal muscle at this end, smooth muscle grows into this ligament from the wall of the intestine. I mean, that's so exciting to me. That's so exciting because what does this ligament do? It controls the movement of digesting food from the duodenum into the jejunum and the ileum. So this participates in the motility of food through the body, right? So we want this. So this is just such an important little loop here that actually and paying attention to this loop also, because a lot of times when people have reflux or things like that, a lot of times their motility, their transit time through their entire GI tract is slowed down, right? And this, if there isn't good motion, the skeletal muscle inducing motion into the smooth muscle to move the food from this second part of the duodenum into the jejunum itself. Isn't that so cool? I love it. Let me see if there's another picture of it that I would like better. Not that I'm seeing right now. So anyway, that is a really worthwhile thing to see. And so that little loop is coming down right from here and going right to about there, right? So that's not in this picture, but it's good to see. And then I want to revisit this picture of where you can see these 3 diaphragms. The one in the floor of the mouth is down here, right? Then you see the roof of the mouth here, and you see how your tongue basically, it's almost like a key to the roof of your mouth. And of course, the mouth itself is the first part of a tube, and that tube becomes your throat and then your esophagus, etc. But look at this little guy up here, this diaphragm up here that hosts the cribriform plate. Beautiful, isn't it? Beautiful. Okay, and I know I showed you these at the beginning, but I think I think that is so useful to see. There's your lens, your iris, and your cornea. And this, the eyeball itself, is very analogous to the central tendon of the diaphragm, if you think about it. Like this connective tissue, but it's highly specialized connective tissue, obviously. But, and the iris is very analogous to your pelvic floor and your cheeks, if you think about it. Remember, we always want to always remember that most of your diaphragm is on the back of your body. Very important. Very important to remember that the diaphragm, most of it is on the back of the body.
Actually, can I ask you a question there?
Yeah, please.
So this was the first time I've done it with someone to be able to, I put my hand on my mom's back, and I wasn't feeling a whole lot. I guess my question is, can someone be doing this and then the person whose hand is there not necessarily feel a lot of pushing, or is it just that
Did she feel like she was getting a breath back there?
She said she did, but I think she's probably never done anything like this before to really know what it could feel like, So if you don't know what it could feel like, you're not used to that proprioception.
Do you feel the breath pushing on your hand?
When I do it on myself, I do, but when I was doing with her, it was like so light that I wasn't sure if it was happening,
Well, it may just be that she's just starting to access it.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, look at how much of your diaphragm is on the back of your body, right? Like there's got to be at least 2/3 of your diaphragm has to be on the back of your body. Just look at that. Just look at that. Look at the how much muscle is back here. Like we said, it's like a stage curtain.
Mm-hmm.
This is like no muscle in this area. This is all muscle on this side, right? There's so much muscle on the back of your diaphragm that when people even just start to use it a little bit, they're going to feel like they're getting a bigger breath. So just encouraging to fill into that hand. And then every time there's an exhalation after filling, remember that you want to really be very conscious about very mindful to try to relax all of these fibers that you can find. Because for a lot of people, this is what it feels like, right? That they should be breathing. Here, let me make myself big again. Let me make myself big. There we go. So diaphragm should move like this, right? But because most people Like let's say this is your sternum and this is your spine. Because most people just use most people are hyperextended in the low back. Like if they're not slacking, they're hyperextended in the low back. And then they just breathe like this, right? The front of the diaphragm moves and it pushes the belly out, right? But the problem with that is, I mean, there's a reason that most of the fibers of your diaphragm are on the back of your body, right? Because that's where we need the most compression and release. If you think about everything that's on the back wall of the body, the kidneys, the spleen, the pancreas, the liver, these are all on the back of the body, or most of a lot of the liver is on the back of the body. Most of the lung tissue is on the back of the body. Most of the lung tissue is in the posterior part of the body. And even the organs that may seem like they're more in front, even the organs that seem like they're more in front. Oh, I love the screen share. I really do. I love anatomy. Hold on a second. Let me bring this guy back. So look at this. Posterior peritoneo. There we go. So let's look at this posterior peritoneal wall. Here's a good view of it. So this is the lining of the back wall of your body, right? So there's some liver that's back there. There's kidneys back here, right? Your pancreas is back here behind this purple wall here. But these places where the wall is cut out shows where organs migrated into this bag. This purple thing is a bag and your organs, some of your organs migrated into that bag as you developed, and that was like punching your hand into a balloon, because as it went in, the hand gets wrapped in balloon that's inside balloon. So it doesn't really puncture through the balloon, it just gets wrapped in it as it goes. Does that make sense? So your organs that migrated into the bag, like your stomach and your liver and gallbladder and parts of your duodenum and then all of your small intestine, all of your jejunum and ileum are inside the bag, right along here. And then what just happened? Okay. And then the large intestine, the first part of your large intestine, your cecum and appendix are inside this bag down here. But your ascending colon stays behind the bag. This hole here is for your liver, by the way. But your ascending colon stays behind the bag, and your descending colon stays behind the bag, right? But some stuff is in the bag, and it's the stuff that's in the bag that seems like it's in the front of the abdomen. But the truth is, the only way that extracellular fluid can escape from any of the organs, like your liver or your transverse colon or your stomach or any of these organs, the small intestine that's inside the bag, the sigmoid colon that's inside the bag, the only way the fluid in the spaces between those cells can get out and return to circulation for reprocessing and recycling and excretion, the only way they can do that is by working their way along that fascial bilayer that is connecting them to the back wall of the body. So all the fluid from the organs has got to drain to the back wall of the body. That's why there's so much muscle fiber on the back of the diaphragm, because that's where we need it the most. That's where we need the most compression and release, is on the back wall of the body, not on the front wall. And so that's why there's so much muscle back there. So even just by finding the back wall of your diaphragm, you are rocketed into the top 99th percentile of breathers in the country. I feel pretty certain about that. It certainly rockets you above the vast majority of pulmonologists in terms of knowing how to breathe. Because we are not, this is like a part of the body that we've forgotten about, unfortunately.
Is Lisa there?
Hmm?
Lisa.
I think so.
Yeah. So most of our lung is back there too. That's where we need the most compression and release. So it's important to find the front part of your thoracic chest. Does that make sense? Did that answer your question? Or was I just enjoying talking about the posterior peritoneal wall, which I do love to do? Any other questions? Do you want to see any pictures? We have 6 minutes. I could show you some others.
6 minutes. I'm just finished 6 minutes.
6 minutes. Oh, that's good. That's good. We can leave it at that if there's no other questions today. Any other questions? All right.
Thank you so much. This
Thank
is
you.
always just so enlightening and so amazing, and I keep wanting to bring more people, and hopefully they'll make it one day.
Okay. Well, I hope you have a great day. I hope you have a great day.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Terrific, Shail.